Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to All Eyes on our round table. And in today's round table, we will talk about the topic of digitalization and the holistic strategies in the digital transformation with really great guests. May I introduce them? Dalla Riva is Vice President Customer Experience and Design at Deutsche Telekom AG and has dedicated her entire career to innovation, working for some of the most innovative B2B and B2C companies. As a designer, Monica has created award-winning products, digital experiences, customer and design strategies that always put the customer first. Secondly, we have Lukas Cottrell. He is managing partner at the Peter Schmidt Group, and his tasks as a strategist and as a designer include developing holistic and meaningful design solutions. He has extensive experience in marketing strategy, brand development, design management, and digital transformation. He can build on more than 20 years of professional experience, which includes projects with many international blue chips clients from the financial services, telecommunications, technology, mobility, and FMCG sectors. Last but very certainly not least, live here with us in the studio is Lutz Dietzold. He has been managing director of the German Design Council since 2002. Since 2011, he has been also a member of the advisory board of the Mia Seeger Foundation and a member of the board of the German Design Museum Foundation, which he took over as a chairman in 2020. So all three of you, thank you very, very much for being our guests today. I think this is going to be a very, very inspiring talk. Now, I suggest ladies first. So my first question will go out to Monica. Hi. What we're seeing these days is that digitalization, obviously, along with sustainability, is changing really all aspects of our life. We're talking private, but we're also talking work. And in work, I feel it's really, really important to really bring people along with you. So how would you say can you achieve that? How do you make sure that people follow the new strategies, so to say?
Well, first of all, it's very important to acknowledge that we are living, all of us, actually the entire world, is living an acceleration of digitalizations nowadays, since almost 1 year now. So what happened is that everyone is doing a personal experience towards what does it mean changing the way of working, changing the way of handling their families or doing shopping. So digitalization is throughout our entire life. So the first thing is being aware, and most of the people are aware. The next step is with empathy, understanding where do we want to go with this new world. There are several scenarios that can be open nowadays using digital technology, but bringing people together means understanding their point of view and making sure that it's included in the future scenarios, plus inspiring them to create a new future with digital technologies. So it's a lot of talks, inspiration, and understanding and listening also, because the change is tough and should be talked about a lot.
Absolutely, but it sounds like you foster a very human-centered approach, although it's a very digitalized topic, so that's nice to hear. Let's talk about the role of design here. How would you say design or communications design can help go along with this change?
Well, design as the word comes from the Latin word designare, that means creating meanings. So the first thing is that if we don't create meaning in what we communicate, it's very hard that we are going to achieve any mindset or any change in the society and in people. So design can use a lot of methodology that is using for solving the problems in general, like empathy or putting the involvement of the customers and the people at the heart. So, and driving these methodologies to engage and communicate in the right way. So most of the time, communication comes from two sides. So it's very important that we keep the other part in this communication and not just we go one way. That's maybe probably the best things to do.
Yeah, many things to keep in mind, certainly. Thank you very much. And Lutz, I was thinking, let's hear about your take on this. How would you say design is needed here?
Yes, I would say even if it comes to products, you see you're most confronted with user interfaces using your smartphone and so on, and technology disappears kind of. And this shows us that the people are, it was like the same when we looking back when the steam machine was found. The people were afraid of it a bit. And the same comes now to digitalization a little bit, that the people are afraid of it and they don't know what is behind. So, and I think this is a rule really for design who can help to transmit, like act as a mediator in this kind. And this will be very important. Even if you see now we are confronted with some disruptive innovations, and some of them, they use retro trends really to get products into the market. And you can see this also in the mobility area. The electro vehicles, they are looking like the gasoline vehicles. But I think this is an important rule really to bring this change to the people, and give design has a role really to get for this innovation solutions that get adopted by the people, and really to find new forms and new expressions.
So it's a highly interesting time, Lutz.
Yeah,
Thank you. Monica, maybe let's go back to you and let's look at the question from the other side. How would you say that digital tools and new tools can change design? Maybe also thinking about an area where digitalization and everything that's digitized is not really the key of a company or of the market.
Well, I think that we need to start again from the customer perspective. Customers are getting used to this new way of using digital tools, right? And even in business where design doesn't have this aspect of digitalizations, we need to consider that the life of people is changing, and design needs to include new technologies in the way they're designing the solutions for the customers. I make you an example. There is one area where I think it's very important that the two aspects, the physical product design and the digital way of doing solutions, should work better together, is exactly in the home. If you consider how many cable we have around ourselves, how many of our tables became home office nowadays, and it's not really, the houses are not really designed to include technologies and digital experiences, is exactly one area where I see that in the future there will be more need of working together to get there. Every product can have two aspects, a physical one and a digital one. It's just a matter on how we design it and how we use the digital tools as a new material, like it was in the past using different form of materials like textile, plastic, metals, and adopt it in the right way to not be too intrusive for customers, but very valuable. I believe that this is going to be one of the new way of including digital technologies and tools into even physical products that were not there before.
Very interesting. I can very much connect with that example from home. Thank you. And Lukas, I have not forgotten about you. Thank you also for being here. I was just wondering, now everything seems to change. Our life is being transformed into this digital world. We're having digital or even virtual conferences and meetings and whatnot. But we're all quite positive that this pandemic is going to go away at some point. So what do you think? What of this change is going to last? Because it was basically digitalization speeded up by the pandemic. And what is going to go away because it's superfluous in the end?
Well, of course, this change is here to stay. I mean, what we're experiencing at the moment is that this world can move on with this new operating system. We're experiencing that we can have these kind of conferences through cameras. And we're experiencing that we don't have to travel around the world to connect to people in Japan, for example. So this is something that is going to stay with us. It's also an experience that helps us to connect in a different way to people around the world, of course, to connect to colleagues at different locations, to work closer with talent all around the world. I think this is definitely something that is going to stay. And I think this is also a good change because having access to this awesome pool of people, talents, experiences, cultures is something that we can really take away. The things that are definitely also are going to come back after this pandemic situation is the need to connect on a different level. I think there is some two important words Monica actually mentioned at the beginning. It's about empathy and meaningfulness. And if we look at the way how we work together, what we are all missing now is a different level of connection, a different level of empathy. Having these kind of conversations over screen doesn't deliver a human element to our communication, and we really need this back, of course. This is not how we are built as humans. We need to connect on a different level. So definitely the things that are also coming back is, and stronger than ever, the yearning for this meaningful and empathic connection on a personal level.
I very much feel you here. Thank you. Now that we're talking connectivity, when you hear the word as such, do you rather think of social connectivity or technological connectivity?
I mean, technological connectivity has a purpose. So it's not there just to connect machines. It's there to actually bring people together. So it's definitely about the social aspect of how to connect to people, how to connect, actually, how to enable them to do something, to achieve something, to build something or create something together. So it is all about the social aspect. And what we also need to keep in mind is that in this pandemic, not everybody has access to these kind of systems. And this is also something that we as designers, as creative people, really need to keep in mind. We need to find ways how to give access, build access on different levels to groups within our society that do not have the chance to participate in this kind of communication as we privileged people can do, because we are used to these kind of systems, to these kind of communications. But if you look, for example, at our education system, especially in Germany, we are really struggling with providing digital access to our kids for learning opportunities. And imagine people who don't have the perfect data connection at home and don't have the perfect computer system at home. Yeah? At times of these in this pandemic, they are basically excluded from participating in the society. And we as creatives have to find ways to give them the possibility to connect in an easier way. And this is definitely one of the most important social tasks that we are facing at the moment.
Absolutely so, and it's going to stay interesting here. Monica, maybe let's go back to you. When we're talking telecommunications, obviously digitalization is basically your DNA. So why don't you tell us a bit what's on your agenda from service to experience?
Well, actually, you just mentioned, so we are really designing a lot of new forms of experiences, and we are really designing that using incredible advanced technology. I'm just thinking about a lot of new interactions that will happen through voicification of platforms, or artificial intelligence, or think about how to use this new technology to simplify the digital experiences. So there is a lot, and especially for us in the design team, where we envision 3 layers of experiences: the actual one on the market, the next to be in the market, and the future looking. It's really the challenge to understand how to fit technology also in the lifestyle of people. I go back to that point for a simple reason. Technology, and I know very well, I've been working always in technological companies, it's a fantastic tool, but it's just a tool. If people don't understand the technology, either it's too advanced or too marginal for them, technology will not be adopted. So we have a lot in our agenda, but I can tell you that the most important thing is linking the opportunity of tomorrow, the technologies, with what really is important for people. And what is important for people is what they can achieve through their focus and their goals is not what we propose them in the market. So our goal is really starting with the insights of people, understanding what is meaningful for them, and then linking the technology. Technology is something very easy if you think about that. It's almost everything is possible nowadays in technology. It's so broad, expansive, but really fitting to the goals of the people, that is the hardest part. So we have a lot in our plate, but also a lot is coming from learning from the customers.
You certainly will not be bored in the future. Lutz, maybe let's talk to you for a bit. I mean, in your function at the German Design Council, you obviously also talk to a lot of German small and mid-sized companies, many small and mid-sized companies in this country, actually. What would you say in your own analysis? How far along are they when it comes to digitalization?
Yeah, it was a really exciting experience to learn last year. We developed a measuring tool for the digitalization in the small and medium-sized companies. And the response and the results were very interesting. Okay, we stopped, and still in some countries, even in Germany, the shops are closed. There are no B2B events, all the fairs are postponed. And so a lot of our companies, we have in our foundation about 340 members, mostly producing companies, they switched their budgets from the events to digitalization. And this sometimes we talked a lot about customer experience, learn from your customers, but the experience was that most of them don't know about what the customers really wanted to have. And so they opened web shops and so on, and they started an intense communication with their customers. So it was really a chance for them to learn more about their customers and to change the way of communication. So B2B communication is very important, but a lot of them now experienced in B2C communication. This was one of the strongest things which is really an innovation for them, and they learned a lot of that.
That's really interesting to hear, because I think prior to the pandemic, we talked a lot about how they may have to catch up in the future. So that is happening now. Lukas, let's talk responsibility a little bit. I mean, when you are responsible of a company, you're also responsible for the employees that work there. And when things change so rapidly, I'm sure you have to encounter certain things, don't you?
Well, definitely. Also, for a company, it's always a challenge to actually bring everybody along. Monica just mentioned how important it is actually to make sure that we take it from the moment users interact with technology and how they interact with technology, and that we need to make sure that we know about how they use what we're creating for them and building for them. And this is just true for every employee within our own company, for example. I mean, we are a creative company focused on design processes. And one of the biggest challenges, of course, during this pandemic is how do you run creative processes when you only have a chance to connect virtually? And we need to find a balance, how to, on the one hand, make sure that repetitive tasks can be, of course, handled from home, but other tasks where you really need to see and understand how a person reacts emotionally to your ideas, that we also have other ways to convey the feelings and also the reactions to creative ideas. Giving and finding forms, new forms of creative interaction, for example, is quite important to us. So how do we achieve that? Besides, of course, the point that we need to make sure that all the systems are running, of course, that the technological platforms are working seamlessly, because we all know the annoyance of a system that is not running if you actually want to get work done. So basically, if you look at our schedules, also our daily work schedules, and you all have the experience probably just the same as we do, your calendar is stuffed full of meetings. And that's, of course, due to the fact that it's so important to connect, to make sure that everybody is actually on the same page, understands where we are going, has a chance actually to follow along The increased importance of communication is something that we need to acknowledge, that we really, really need to connect to our people, that we need to make sure that they are, of course, still part of this community that we are building.
Being part is a very good keyword to my next question. Now we're hearing a lot about artificial intelligence, and that can already be creative, be it music, be it art, whatever. What would you say does that mean for human creativity? Will we be less part of the creative process here?
That is an interesting question. The creative process itself, and perhaps that also is connecting to how systems help us to be creative, or platforms help us to creative, or even new inventions or new possibilities to be creative, like artificial intelligence helps us to, or supports us in the creative process. I do think, of course, that as creatives, as designers, it is our main objective, of course, to work on solving problems in a creative way. New systems and new platforms will help us to achieve that. So the creative process will change, of course, how we will work together will change, of course, and our way of working will change.
And it will stay interesting. Thank you. Lutz, that might be a bit of a broad question, but we're talking digitalization and economy. What would be your wish for the economy now these days?
Yeah. What will be my wish? Okay, we're talking about design. So that means, what is the role of design inside the companies, the producing companies? And we see in the medium-sized companies that mostly they are working with freelance designers. I think it's now, and we heard a lot of examples, a good time really to implement design in your company and really to strengthen the processes and to see that design is a C-level topic in the companies. And we have to work for that.
Absolutely, and I'm sure that all of you will do so. Thank you very much. It was highly interesting and very inspirational to talk to the three of you. Thank you for taking your time from Italy and Germany and right here in Frankfurt. And I hope to hear from you soon again. Thank you. So also thank you very much, dear audience, for being with us today. This concludes our roundtable on the topic of digitalization. We thank you very much for being with us, not only in this episode of All Eyes On, but also all the others which you can find on our website. You may also check social media for more information if you like. In the meantime, stay healthy. All the best to you, and bye-bye. Thank you.